The bold and the beautiful, blood lies and shattered bonds. It began with a fall. Kelly Spencer, vibrant and full of energy, suffered a minor accident that sent shockwaves far beyond the emergency room. When Steffi rushed her daughter to the hospital after a biking mishap, no one expected the routine tests to yield anything but reassurance. But then came the test, the one that cracked open the carefully constructed lie holding several lives together. A standard blood panel flagged an anomaly. For Dr. John Finn Finnegan, it was impossible to ignore. As a physician, it was his job to dig deeper. As Kelly's stepfather, it was personal. Finn ran the DNA test under the pretense of medical necessity. What he discovered was both clinical and devastating. Liam Spencer, Kelly's supposed biological father, was not a match. The paternity didn't align. At first, Finn didn't want to believe it. Could it be a lab error? A mix-up? He reran the test. The result was the same. Liam was not Kelly's biological father. The revelation struck like a wrecking ball through the foundation of everything Steffi and Liam had built for their daughter. But for Finn, it was more than just a biological mix-up. It was a threat to everything he believed about his wife and her past. He confronted Steffi. At first, she was in denial. Then came the tears, the guilt, and finally the truth. It had happened during one of her many breakups with Liam, a stretch of time where they were, as always, taking space. In her vulnerable state, unsure of her future and desperate for comfort, she met a man. He wasn't part of their world. He wasn't a Forrester, a Spencer, or a Logan. He was a stranger. A brief, passionate encounter that she never thought would come back to haunt her. She never told anyone, especially not Liam. When she learned she was pregnant, Liam was the only man she believed could be the father. It fit the timeline. It fit the narrative. So she buried the truth and moved forward. Now, the truth refused to stay buried. Finn was livid, not just for the betrayal, but for the lies. He felt like a fool. He had loved Kelly as his own. And Steffi, the woman he married, had lied to him from the beginning. Every bedtime story, every scraped knee he had kissed, every tear he had wiped from Kelly's cheek. It had all been under a false pretense. But more than that, he felt the ground shifting beneath his feet. If Kelly wasn't Liam's daughter, then who was her father? And what kind of man was he? Finn began to investigate, going back to that gap in time. He sifted through Steffi's schedule, pieced together her movements, called in favors. Quietly, methodically, he narrowed the window of conception and started tracking who Steffi had encountered. Meanwhile, the emotional explosion was already detonating. When Liam found out, his world shattered. For years, he'd struggled to balance two families, Hope and Beth on one side, Steffi and Kelly on the other. He believed he was being a good father, doing his best. But now, the child he thought was his flesh and blood wasn't his. His anger was volcanic. He accused Steffi of robbing him of years of bonding, of building a relationship on a lie. He felt duped, manipulated, emasculated. The betrayal cut so deep that he couldn't look at Steffi without seething. And yet, there was Kelly. He still loved her. Even knowing she wasn't biologically his, Liam refused to walk away. He was her dad in every way that mattered. He'd raised her, held her during fevers, calmed her nightmares. He wasn't about to let go, not without a fight. The situation spiraled. Emotions ran unchecked. Steffi tried to hold the pieces together, but Finn pulled away. Liam pushed harder. And in the midst of it all, the legal system got involved. What began as a secret unraveled into a public scandal. Liam filed for partial custody, citing his history as Kelly's de facto father and arguing for the preservation of the child's emotional well-being. Steffi was blindsided. She had always assumed custody was secure, unchallenged. But now everything was in question. Finn, tormented by the breach of trust, withdrew emotionally from both Steffi and Kelly. He loved his wife, but the deception had scarred their bond. And still, the mystery of Kelly's real father haunted him. In secret, he pursued the final piece of the puzzle. And he found it. The man was named Jack Reynolds, a traveling entrepreneur who'd met Steffi at a hotel bar during a business conference in Aspen. They spent 2 nights together, then never spoke again. Jack was stunned when Finn showed up on his doorstep with a paternity request. The resemblance was undeniable. A test confirmed it. Jack Reynolds was Kelly's biological father. When Steffi heard the name, her memory clicked back into place. It was all true. Now another man was pulled into the vortex. Jack was conflicted. He had no intention of becoming a father at this point in his life, but he also couldn't ignore the truth. A daughter? A granddaughter? A second chance at a legacy? The more he thought about it, the more he wanted to know her. Steffi, already juggling a crumbling marriage and a custody war, now had to manage the arrival of a stranger claiming paternal rights. The press caught wind. Rumors circulated. The Forresters were embarrassed. The Spencers were furious. And Kelly, innocent, unaware, caught in a storm of adult chaos, was being tugged between households, secrets, and anger. Hope Logan, ever the moral compass, tried to mediate. But her efforts were met with skepticism. Liam, spiraling, grew erratic. He doubled down on the custody fight, accusing Steffi of negligence, deception, and emotional instability. He claimed that Jack's sudden involvement proved Steffi's judgment couldn't be trusted. Meanwhile, Finn moved out, unable to reconcile the woman he loved with the choices she made. He didn't know if their marriage could survive. Steffi stood alone, cornered. Her past mistakes were now the leash pulling her present into chaos. But she was fierce, determined. She vowed to protect Kelly no matter the cost. Jack, perhaps unwisely, decided to pursue partial custody, adding more legal firepower to an already volatile case. What followed was a brutal court battle. Testimonies, character witnesses, accusations of manipulation, lies, and moral failings. The judge saw a family disintegrating before her eyes. Ultimately, a temporary custody arrangement was reached. Steffi retained primary custody, with Liam granted visitation rights, and Jack given supervised access to begin establishing a relationship. But peace was far from reached. Finn remained distant, uncertain if he could trust again. Liam, though legally sidelined, continued to insert himself in Kelly's life with fierce conviction, determined not to be erased. Jack, emboldened, began pushing for greater involvement, stirring more conflict. And Steffi, battered but not broken, carried the burden of holding it all together for her daughter's sake. And Kelly? She kept asking the same question, over and over, why can't everyone just be happy again? But happiness wasn't part of the story, not yet. Not when love, lies, and blood had rewritten everything they thought was true. After the courtroom dust settled, the damage lingered. Steffi, once the proud, composed face of Forrester Creations and the matriarch of her own carefully curated life, found herself isolated, scrutinized, and emotionally stripped bare. The press had feasted on the scandal. Headlines blared with betrayal, DNA bombshells, and the collapse of one of LA's most iconic families. Inside the Forrester walls, whispers replaced support. Ridge and Taylor tried to stand by their daughter, but even they were exhausted. Caught between public perception and private loyalty, Hope kept her distance. Brooke used the moment to sharpen her edge. And Finn? He was no longer returning her calls. Steffi couldn't breathe. She tried to keep up the facade. She kept attending meetings at Forrester, putting on makeup like armor, walking into rooms like nothing had changed, but everything had. The designers looked at her with side eyes. The interns whispered. Even her assistant was cold. The break room, the boardroom, the photo shoots, they all became minefields of silent judgment. And worst of all, Liam had moved on. Not just emotionally, publicly. He posted smiling photos with Beth and Hope. He did press interviews about fatherhood, careful never to name Kelly, but always to imply her absence. The subtext was clear. Steffi was unstable. The lie had destroyed the image of co-parenting perfection. Even though he wasn't Kelly's father, he remained in her life with a possessiveness that unsettled Steffi. Every visit felt like surveillance. Every exchange with Liam was sharp-edged. She started locking her doors. She started checking her rearview mirror. She stopped sleeping. Then came the final blow. Finn filed for separation. He couldn't take it anymore. The lies, the public fallout, the constant tension. He loved Kelly, but he didn't trust Steffi. And trust, he said in the filing, was non-negotiable. There was no dramatic fight, no confrontation. Just a man who once gave everything walking away without looking back. That night, Steffi cried harder than she had in years. She cried not just for her marriage, but for what she had become, a mother in ruins, a partner without love, a woman at war with everyone, including herself. So she packed her things. No press release. No goodbyes. No explanation. Just a quiet decision. She left a letter with Amelia, Kelly's nanny, explaining that she needed to go for clarity, for healing, for sanity. She kissed Kelly in her sleep and drove through the night, leaving the city lights of Los Angeles behind without telling a soul. She boarded a flight to Europe under her maiden name. The world only noticed she was gone days later. Ridge was furious. Taylor was devastated. Thomas tried to protect her privacy, but Forrester's press office spun the narrative. Steffi was on temporary leave for wellness. In reality, she had no plans to return. She found solitude in the Swiss Alps, renting a secluded chalet near a quiet village where no one knew her name, no one asked questions, and no one cared about the Spencers, Forresters, or paternity scandals. She spent her mornings hiking and her evenings journaling. Slowly, she found herself again, not the model, not the executive, not the symbol, but the person. She thought about Kelly every day, but stayed away out of fear that her presence would only stir more chaos. She spoke to Amelia often, got updates, sent gifts. But she didn't call Liam. She didn't call Finn. She didn't trust them with her heart anymore. Back in LA, the vacuum she left behind began to shift dynamics. Liam, emboldened by her absence, pushed for more custody. He claimed Steffi had abandoned her daughter. Jack Reynolds countered, asserting that as Kelly's biological father, he now had equal rights, and with Steffi gone, he wanted to step in. The courts agreed to a shared custody trial, pending Steffi's return. Hope, unexpectedly, began to feel sympathy for Steffi. Watching Liam's aggressive pursuit of control made her question his motives. She had spent years competing with Steffi, but now, with Steffi gone, she started to see just how much pressure and pain the woman had endured. She even confronted Liam, asking if he was fighting for Kelly or punishing Steffi. Meanwhile, Finn, after months of silence, found himself haunted by regret. He missed her. He missed their life. He missed the way she held their family together, even in chaos. When he heard she had left the country, it shattered him. He realized too late that while trust was broken, love still remained. But he didn't know how to reach her or if she would even listen. Then came the rumor. Zend, on a business trip in Paris, spotted someone who looked like Steffi, long dark hair, sunglasses, scarf around her neck. He swore it was her. Ridge got on the next flight. When he finally tracked her down, he barely recognized his daughter. She was thinner, quieter, different, but also peaceful. She told him she wasn't ready to come back, not yet. She wasn't hiding. She was healing. Ridge begged her to at least return for Kelly's sake. That word, Kelly, cut deep. Steffi broke down. She wanted to return. She missed her baby, but she feared the storm waiting for her in Los Angeles. The press, the custody fight, Liam's rage, Jack's looming presence. So Ridge made a deal. He'd keep her location secret and protect her interests at Forrester if she agreed to write to Kelly every week. Not just text, real letters. Something Kelly could hold, something real from her mother. Steffi agreed. And every week, in that little village, Steffi wrote her daughter letters full of truth, love, and hope, hoping one day, when she was strong enough, she could return and reclaim what was hers. But for now, she stayed in exile, no longer the Queen of Forrester, but a mother in mourning. A woman reshaping herself from the ashes of her past, quietly preparing for the day she would rise again.